This journey will guide inside the ride where we fly. Virtual roads touch the sky. Join us here, don't be shy. Inside the ride, yeah, we hide.
Welcome to Inside the Ride by MyWhoosh. I am your host, Cy Bradley, and once again, should I say, I am joined by Matt Smithson. Matt Smithson, how are we doing today?
Fantastic, mate. Excited for the week, excited for everything that's going on. So can't wait to get into it and have a chat with our guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to be having some more guests over the next couple of months. Just a quick reminder, though, to the listeners and the watchers, wherever you sort of consume your podcast content here on Inside the Ride, that we are going to be moving to a 2-week cadence, no pun intended. But don't worry, we're going to have plenty of great guests over the next couple of weeks and months. And today is no exception, because we are joined, of course, by, I want to say, one of the legends here of cycling esports, and particularly here at MyWhoosh, Mr. Michael Vink. Michael, how are we doing?
Very good. Very happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, this show, because I know I've been messaging for some time, and I think Matt's probably been pestering you as well to try and get you in, because I won't say you've been around the block here at MyWhoosh a little bit, but you've been racing on the platform for some time, I think, Mr. Vink.
Yeah, actually longer than the records go back, I think, the official records. So I think it was early 2021 that I started.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Right. Yeah, that sounds about right. There was some discussion in the office the other day when we actually started, because the records actually don't go that far back. And I was thinking it was late 2020, but it could have been early 21.
No, I think it was mid 2020.
Mid 2020.
Mid to late 2020.
Yeah, and back on that jungle track.
Yeah, but it was, I think, very, very different back then.
Yes.
Definitely lots of improvements now, which is good. So.
No, I've been here, I think, since March 21 I started. So I'm about to come up 4 years at MyWhoosh, and it was certainly going at that point. I remember doing the first one and thinking, what have I got myself into here? So yeah, it's been a long while, lots of build, lots of changes, which we can certainly have a chat about today. And you've been across with it all, with all the family connections you've got involved in racing. Your sister is out there every single week.
Yeah.
Ella and her husband's brother, is that right? Cameron and Mark's her partner?
Yeah, Mark's the partner, and
right.
Then Cameron's the brother.
Yeah, well, Mark and I race each other every week.
Yep.
And we're generally within a couple of seconds of each other at the finish. So I always know that my form's okay if I'm finishing close to Mark every week. So yeah, that's about how I work it. And my wife always tries to keep up with Ella and usually struggles. So it's great to see that. And it's what MyWhoosh has actually been, Sunday Race Club's been built off the back of, is so much of this family participation.
Yeah.
So it's not just you dominating Cat 1. Your sister's racing down in, I think she's in Cat 4 now, but been in Cat 2, 3 and 4 over the years. So yeah, everyone gets out there and has fun with everything. Even Cy jumps out there every now and then, gets dropped in Cat 4.
All right, so yeah, as you can see, this is going to be an interesting show today, because Michael and Matt are both in the studio in Abu Dhabi, and I'm here in my UK studio. And I know, Matt, you're going to want to talk about all things professional road cycling. So I want to start there if we can, Michael. You're from Christchurch in New Zealand. Why don't you just give a bit of a background on your sort of introduction to cycling? And I do believe you were national champion in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, so basically as a young kid, I was always riding bikes through school and for as long as I can remember. And I actually started in road cycling through schools racing, because we had winter sport as a compulsory thing where I went to school, and I kind of liked riding mountain bikes and spending time on bikes, so I decided to choose road cycling and did that, and had through some races, of course, and turns out I was actually pretty good. And from there it just sort of grew, and as soon as I left school I was off and over to Europe, and the rest is history, really. It's just been getting bigger and bigger and snowballed since then, so it's certainly been non-stop for the last 15, 16 years.
And I know a little bit of your career, because maybe you don't know this, we haven't chatted about this before, but you and I have actually raced each other in the National Road Series in Australia. Well, I'll rephrase that. I was participating down the back, and you were riding off the front. I think you were riding with St George or something at that point in time, and I was riding on, I don't know, someone that gave me a free jersey sort of thing. I was probably late 30s, early 40s. And that was when I first sort of heard the name and that type of stuff. And your career, you were always stronger than everybody else, but it maybe didn't go where it should have gone early. So you want to talk us through a little bit with that, and how then I suppose that led into MyWhoosh Esports, and then to Team UAE Emirates?
Yeah, so I think was quite a hard and long journey for me through professional cycling, or to get to professional cycling. I think I certainly had my fair share of bad luck, like everyone does. I think I always had the ability, and I think everyone knew I had the ability, but I think the difficult thing for me was that just in my characteristics, I'm not really super good at one thing. I can kind of do a little bit of everything, and to have that place in professional cycling, you really need to stand out in one way or another. And that was sort of the difficulty, and I've had some good results in Europe, and there was one year, like classic example, was my last year under 23. I had some really good results and good races. I won some races where they're the sort of races that if you win these races, you definitely go pro the next year. And you're sort of thinking, all right, this is great. But also that was the year there was a big crisis in professional cycling, and I think there was 7 professional teams that folded that year. So, there's more than 100 guys out of a job, so for a young guy trying to find a contract. And there just seems to have been a lot of those things throughout my career that have just not gone my way.
Yeah.
So that makes everyone has that. No one has the perfect run. You just got to keep fighting and keep trying, and that's as much a part of being a professional as the actual physical attributes. Is just that determination, that willpower, that just ability to keep pushing in the face of adversity.
And what some people...
Can I...
Sorry, go, mate. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, I just want to ask a quick question about that as well. I'm just thinking, we always say, right, that the centre of cycling has always been Europe. And I just wonder, is it compounded? Is it more difficult? Obviously, we're getting more cyclists now, professional cyclists from New Zealand. You've got yourself, Jack Bauer, George, and all, these riders. But is there something... Is it more difficult because you're on this island so far away from what is considered the sort of historical centre of cycling as such? Or is that just not the case anymore?
I think it definitely, or when I was growing up, for sure, because firstly, you're away from home, everything's different, you don't have your routine, it's sort of hard to find your norm, find your balance when just completely everything is different because you don't have those sort of reference points, and it's really easy to get lost. And also to be in a professional team, obviously the professional teams have local sponsors, and the local sponsors want local riders. And when the level is already super high in professional cycling, if you're in a French team and you've got 20 or so French teammates and you're trying to get the spot in the professional team, you have to be 20-30% better than these guys to get that spot. 100. And these guys are already super high level, so it's...
Yeah, and that hasn't changed in 30-40 years, and maybe now it's a little bit different, and that's where we can probably run into this esports thing. But yes, it's an interesting thing for Australians or New Zealanders. It's a long way. It's not cheap as well. So when you're making that commitment, it's all or nothing for most people that go over. You then don't have any mates over there that you can stay with, or couldn't in the past, so you've got to find somewhere to rent. You can't have a part-time job, you can't do all of that stuff. So those things sort of compound it, and you can't just go, I've had a bad week, I'm just going to go back home and recharge. You're stuck there, right? So it's a hard piece for everybody, and that's why I think moving into esports now, I think that's where MyWhoosh and Sunday Race Club is such a pathway. Like, we've got a couple of young guys. Well, we've got a young guy and a young girl from Sydney. So we've got Lyndon Molostic, who's sort of fringe top 10 in Cat 1 SRC, and there's a young girl, Hannah Janati, I think her name is, that is fringe back of Cat 1 winning Cat 2. Now, she's just been the first under-19 in this new pro series in Australia that started over the weekend. Lyndon's pathway, he had a bad Australian Championships, he punched it in the first couple of kilometres. No one would know him if it wasn't through the numbers that are being made in MyWhoosh, and I know that his data's been sent around. I don't know whether anything's happening there, don't get me wrong, but it's a pathway, and it's a pathway that landed Michael with Team Emirates. So let's have a chat about that. Started SRC back in the day, and I believe that SRC's got a lot harder, as we know, over the years, but the top guys were there pretty early on. So yourself, Michael Knudsen, I think, was there quite early. Yep. I think Lionel was probably around pretty early, and Jason. Yep. So the same guys that you're racing now were there right from the start. You start winning. You start dominating on this platform, and verification's very early on. We don't know if people are real or not, and we've all seen some that came in and out that we had to get rid of. And then you get a call. What happens from there?
Yeah, so basically I was just going about my thing, doing SRC. I'd been doing it for a few years at that point.
No team at this point for the road?
I don't know if this was around COVID time,
Okay.
or maybe just after
Just
COVID.
maybe after
yeah,
COVID.
just after COVID. So things
Yep.
were still a little bit shaky.
Yep.
There was sort of, especially in Australia and New Zealand, there was not so much racing in Asia and whatnot. But yeah, anyway, just really doing SRC, focusing on that quite heavily. Doing well, winning some races, and I think probably most of all winning races in certain ways that I think turned some heads. I was never the guy that would wait till the end and sprint or go on the last climb. I like to put myself out there, attack early, and make a hard race. So yeah, I had some really good results, and yeah, one day I was out on a training ride. I can't remember, I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, and stopped to fill up bottles of water, and I had a message from Mauro Giannetti. And I said, "Oh, Mauro Giannetti, who's this guy?" I said to my friend, do you know who this is? He sounds like he's, somewhat important. He goes, "That's the boss of UAE." I said, "Oh, the boss." He's like, "Yeah, no, like the boss." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, I better call him back." And then yeah, I gave him a call, and he said, yeah, basically they'd noticed me in SRC, and they were impressed what I was doing, and they wanted to do some more testing. There was certainly no obligation, no promises or anything. They just wanted to get some more information. So yeah, they organised some testing to do with a local lab, and it was like a ramp test type thing with lactate and all that sort of stuff. I did that, sent the numbers back, and then I had a call again sort of a couple of days later, and they say, "Are you ready to get on a plane and come to camp in UAE in October?" And I said, "Yeah, just send me the ticket and I'll be there." So
Yeah,
and it just
Wow.
there's two great things out of that. Is one, that message does arrive. So I'm 48 now. I'm still waiting for the message to come.
Still
So
waiting.
for everybody out there, this actually does happen, all right? So stay by your phones. I'm sure all of us are going to get picked up out of Cat 4, 5 and 6 in the not too distant future. But that's pretty cool that it works like that. Like legitimately, there's no manager involved. There's no whatever. Somebody has just seen, this guy's pretty good. We need someone that fits this calibre. And I don't think the formalisation with MyWhoosh and UAE was that strong at that point in time. And that sort of a little bit, I think, grew out of that as well. But I remember I just had come here at that camp as well. And that's when I think I first met you. And we were both a little bit deer in headlights. Like, what are these two blokes doing here? And I think Jay Vine might have just joined as well, and Jay didn't know anybody, and there's dinners and all this stuff going on, and here's Tade sitting there, and I remember sitting there going, how have I ended up involved in this? And no doubt you sort of felt the same that first camp in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a bit of sort of starstruck type of a feeling going on, but at the same time I'd been around cycling a long time, and I'd ridden with a lot of World Tour guys, and I was friends with a lot of World Tour guys.
Okay.
I think because they always respected me, and I respected them, and we'd train together, and they knew the sort of person I was, and I was a good person to train with. And I think at that point there was two other Kiwis on the team. I think George and Finn.
Yeah, George and Finn, I think, were there at that
So
point.
I knew them a little bit as well. And I actually messaged George when I first had the call from Mauro, and I said, because I assumed George might have said something or whatever, and I said, "Oh, do you know anything about this?" And he goes, "Oh, I know zero."
Yeah, right.
And then I turn up the camp, and he was like, I didn't ever imagine it would take 10 years for you to get to this point. Like, I can't believe it's finally just happening now. So, and I was like, yeah, same for me. So, but we're here, so let's go.
Yeah, look, it's a really, really cool story. And, we make jokes about getting the phone call, but the fact that, you got that call, right? It's, to join what essentially now is the biggest team in the world, the number one ranked team in the world. So you've had all of these years, you've been the strongest guy in just about any race that I've certainly ever seen you ride, and all of that, but you maybe didn't convert that into the wins or whatever has happened on the road. And so now you get this opportunity, and you're like, okay, I'm Pro Tour now, I'm World Tour. This is as big as it's going to get. So how does training, life, nutrition, how does all of that change now from what you've known for that 10 years? Is it totally eye-opening, different experience that we all think, or is it, you just get on and do the same thing, and the racing is just a bit harder and you just get a bit better? What's it like?
I think it's just everything is just stepped up really, really close to the limit now. I mean, we see the times on the climbs that guys are doing, just the level in professional cycling now. And that is because of the preparation, the training, the nutrition. So it's not just the paces got faster, the paces got faster because everything is stepped up.
Yep.
In unison with that. So yeah, everyone is just so close to the limit now. There's not a lot left on the table. Anything that can be measured or improved is or tested is done. So it's just the level now is. It's honestly, unless you've actually been there, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Just how just how brutal it is, really, to be honest. And it doesn't stop either. You know, we don't really get holidays, or even if you do get a holiday, there's always the thought in your back of your mind, I've got to start training again in 3 weeks. You know, you can't just go crazy at a buffet or just completely let yourself go. People are still doing off-season runs and still have diet programs through the off-season and all sorts.
So when we talk about the professionalism within these teams, and I'm sure UAE is up there with what Ineos was years ago, and Sky and all those other teams that really take this seriously. So talk about training program, nutrition. So you've got a coach in the team, and they. So what's the training like? Are you racing that much that training sort of becomes recovery, or how does it work?
No. So basically, training is full gas too.
Right.
Basically, there's a certain level in racing, and to reach or to get to that level, you need to be able to handle a certain level of training.
Right.
So the training is such that you need to be able to make that training work. And if you can't do that training, then you don't have the level to race.
Right. So
I think is a lot of the basis of it.
Yeah, and so that's about being able to handle load, I'm presuming.
Yep,
so
exactly.
Yeah, I'm very good friends with one of the top female professionals in the world, and I've seen a little bit of her data, and her brother's my best mate, and he has the talent as well. And when you're talking TSSs and these sort of things, the ability for them to go so much deeper than a normal person and keep training and keep performing is when I realised I don't have this, right? And I think that's the big difference. A lot of people look at the power and look at the numbers that someone can make over a short period of time, but it's how deep you can continue to train and continue to perform. I'm presuming that's what you're sort of saying.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like in professional road cycling, it's when you start to feel that complete fatigue is really when the race starts.
Yeah, right.
So it's about being able to perform under fatigue, and not just in a single race, but throughout a whole season, because you never ever, or you very rarely recover 100%, particularly for a guy like me. Between races, you're often doing races at 80, 90%. Everyone's probably doing more races than they would ideally like. So it's really about being able to perform when you're fatigued.
Okay.
And the only way to really prepare yourself for that is to train that. So training is really about maximum fatigue.
Right.
So it's a lot of long days, a lot of zone 2, really designed to try and sort of grind the body down and get that super compensation.
Okay. So what's a week look like? What's a rough week as a world tour? Was it 4, 5, 8,000 K? Is it what sort of TSS? What are we trying to achieve?
It can vary quite a lot. I would say average is probably around 700-800 kilometers a week.
So what's that, 20 hours, 22 hours?
Yeah, 25 even,
25?
Depending on the sort of climbing.
Yeah.
A lot of zone 2.
Okay.
There's one of the big things that's really changed now is we don't really do those easy coffee rides. There's not really any bunch rides anymore. There's no, 5 hours along the coast chatting with your mates or being in a group. Every training ride is structured. Every minute of that ride has a particular purpose. There is a power zone you have to be in, a heart rate zone or whatever. So it's very, very regimented, which does take a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
It's sort of hard to say, but it's just become at that level now where it's just so focused and so regimented. But it's good. Like when you're riding really well, it's really good because you can hit those numbers, you can do it, and it's really satisfying. But a lot of guys sort of get to a point where they get a bit tired or things start to maybe not go as well, and it's really quite a steep drop off when things start to not go well, because you really have to be close to 100% throughout the year, otherwise it really shows. So
yeah, it's interesting.
cutthroat.
It's interesting to hear that type of stuff where, people talk about the different speeds and the increases in pro level racing and stuff, but and I've even seen these comparisons on the internet where they say the new bike's not much faster than the old bikes, and if I go up a climb, it's only 20 seconds slower being on Lance's bike than Tade's bike or whatever. But everybody forgets about the shoes, the clothes, the helmets, the gloves, everything is optimized now. The training is optimized, like you're saying. It's like if you, I think in the past, could read a bike race and you had a little bit of talent, you could get somewhere, where now it's about the ability mentally to get through the training, and then have the ability as well. Because the ability, I think, that a lot of people forget is it's not just having the physical ability to perform. A lot of people have that. It's having the mental ability to continue to do the training day in, day out when you're feeling like what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I think maybe in the past that was 30% and the talent was 70%, where now it seems the ability to do that training and be regimented and diet and all of those things is now the 70%. The talent is maybe only the 30%. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a hard one because even like 10 years ago, we all trained as hard as we thought we could. And now we're at this point where we're training, quite a significant amount more, and it really makes you wonder what the next 10 years is going to be like, or where are the next gains to be made. So, yeah, I think it's also at the point now where everyone in the World Tour is super, super professional.
Yep.
You see these young guys coming through, and they're 18 years old, and they've got diet plans, they've got the best coaches in the world, they have access to the best equipment. And I think starting cycling in that environment, I think it's easier for them to continue that path. There's someone that's done it for 10 years and then all of a sudden they're starting to have to weigh their food and put in all the training metrics and all this sort of stuff. I think that's part of the reason why we see so many good young riders.
So coming to the weighing of the food and the nutrition, and this leads us, I think, into our discussion we'll have about esports now, is esports is just watts per kilo, right? Plain and simple, it's a watts per kilo game, predominantly at the moment. And at MyWhoosh, we're trying to change that to make a little bit more strategy, and that's what we did at the World Championships this year, and which would have been awesome if you were there, but we'll certainly talk more about that. But talking about the diet and the planning and that type of stuff now. So for all of us, we need racing esports, we need to get lighter. So what's a diet plan? Are you legit? Like every kilojoule, everything is weighed, measured. You know what your targets are. Are we at that level with World Tour stuff?
It depends on the rider and the time of season. So some riders like to have a really structured plan around diet, whether it's for the performance or for the head or whatever. Some riders just like to have a plan to follow. Other riders are a bit more free. To be honest, if you're you have the skin folds or the body fat percent that you need to have, I don't think there's going to be many teams that will force you to sort of to weigh the food and do meal plans and things like that. But many riders do anyway. So yeah, basically during the races and the training, the nutritionist gets the data for the ride, so they can see the kilojoules.
Yep.
And you have your basal metabolic rate and what you've done in the race and whatnot, and they can roughly calculate what you need, sort of fats, carbs and proteins type thing. And generally, like in UAE, we'd have like a meal plan with certain general foods, like rice per 100 grams, or chicken per 100 grams, or risotto, whatever, and all these different things, or cereals, and basically just put in the spreadsheet what you've had and how much, and it sort of spits it out. And as long as the macros kind of line up, then you're good, and the nutritionist can see all this. So
yeah, perfect. It's just
it makes sense. I mean,
yeah, it does. It's so professional, and I think we now understand. It used to be this thing of if you lost a bit of weight, you lost a bit of power. It used to be this mentality. I'm sure you had that growing up, where now that just doesn't apply, right? It's just the lighter you are, the faster you go.
But also it does actually work in the opposite way as well, because oftentimes we're doing this to make sure riders have enough.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing, because the racing and the training is so hard now, it actually can be really difficult to get enough food.
Right.
So in the racing, it's more to make sure you get enough, whereas in the training camps, it's probably more the opposite.
Okay.
But it's such a fine balance between losing and gaining. I mean, you're never exactly at equilibrium. You're always either losing or gaining on any given day. So just trying to get that balance right is a really fine art. So I think, anything we can do to help that is good. And also quantifying things. Some riders just like to quantify things and have numbers. And I think as bike riders, we're quite good at following numbers, or we like to have numbers on things. So yeah.
Well, that actually leads into my question, Michael. If, there's some athletes. I've got some athlete friends who are that detail orientated anyway, without the sort of professional setup around. And then you've got athletes like me and Matt, which are a bit more relaxed about these things, I guess, from that point of view. But were you one of those athletes who were really into that detail with the food and the numbers anyway? Or was it like a big change and a big shock when you moved to this professional setup with the UAE that you had to make lots of adaptations?
I think, and a lot of riders will actually say this, I think when I was younger I was more into it, but after 10 years of doing it, you just kind of know what you need to do. Like a lot of pros that I talk to now will say, oh, the most nervous I ever was for a race was when I was in Junior World Championships in 2007 or whatever, and these are guys that have won Grand Tour stages and whatnot. So
right.
I think, again, it's a balance, and so many riders are so different. It's really about understanding the rider, knowing what makes them tick and doing the best thing for them. It's like some riders like pressure, some riders crumble under pressure, and you really have to understand the rider and give them the right stimulus to get the best out of them. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Sorry, that really leads really nicely onto the other question I was thinking of as well, because obviously you were high level on the road in New Zealand, you turned professional, you'd come through MyWhoosh in a way with cycling esports side. I wonder what advice or what were the areas that were challenging when you moved to that professional setup, in the UAE with, in Europe and so on. What were the sort of the main challenges for you then that, I just wonder if you share some of those challenges, it might be useful for other athletes which are on cycling esports platforms or coming through those ranks. So, what are those bits of advice that you would give those younger athletes coming through?
To be honest, I think the biggest shock for me with the World Tour was just that transition from being a sort of a sport of passion to a sport of business, and just the sort of mechanics behind the scenes that make everything tick. And at the end of the day, it's about representing a sponsor. It's not just about winning bike races. So there's a lot that sort of goes on with politics, with certain riders and certain teams and compositions and things, and just sort of, I think, standing back and understanding what the team actually wants from a rider and what they want as a general outcome for their team. It's not often a case of just having the best legs or having the best result. It's about trying to ensure the right outcome for the team, whatever that may be. So that was probably the big shock. I mean, it's probably not the answer I want to give. But I think cycling's just grown so much now. There's so much more investment. It's just a much bigger business now. So with that, there's new pressures, there's new responsibilities, there's new obligations. It's really changing a lot now.
And so for us now, it's great that you're back on MyWhoosh, and we'll talk about the esports side of it now and how that all fits. So you ride MyWhoosh for long period, a couple of years. You go World Tour. You're now back out of the World Tour, and we've had a few conversations, and it's a real focus now on esports for you. I presume you're not looking to go back to the World Tour at this point in time, or see what happens?
No, so it's a hard one. It's really a case of head versus heart type thing. Like, my heart's on the road and in the World Tour, but my head is definitely with this virtual racing and with MyWhoosh. So that could change. I mean, it could just be because I've done the road stuff for so long that's sort of what I know.
Yeah.
But as far as my head, like what my head says, it's 100% this virtual racing and being with MyWhoosh. It just, in every possible way, it makes more sense than racing on the road and in the World Tour.
Yeah, and I think that the world champion Jason Osborne, I think he's feeling about the same.
Yep.
He's like, it's really difficult life. It's hard. It's not. I'm not top 20 in the world type thing. I think it's probably a different story for those guys. But it's a hard way to make a living, right? The crashes and rain and all those sort of things. And then you can come in here and you go, I'm really good at this. Right?
Yep.
I'm really good. This suits my characteristics, as it does with Jason, right? Super powerful guys, both of you. Not, as you said before, not a standout at particularly anything, but really good at everything.
Yep.
And so you come across to this, and esports tends to suit that a little bit more at this point in time.
Yep.
And surprising for me was Jason at the World Championships. I didn't think Jason would win that. Now, I obviously a party to everybody's numbers and the course design and what I thought it was going to take to win that. And I actually didn't think Jason would win. I thought that we hadn't built a course that was probably hard enough for him,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't long enough for him. But still came out and he dominated, right? The points show he didn't dominate, but he rode away in that third stage, and I'm sure you've seen what went on. And now you're back. So and you lately you've been a little stronger than Jason in SRC. So focus moving forward now for you is Esports, World Championships hopefully this year, and with a bit of luck we go to the Olympics. Is that sort of
Yeah, I mean,
the plan?
And that's another thing with my decision to do this, to focus on esports, is that I have that control. I have those options. I can choose what I want to do. Even like the last World Championships, it would have been great to be there, but that was not something that was within my control. And yeah, particularly after, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks after I was back on SRC and I won my first race. So, and I was sort of just thinking, what if?
Yeah.
And particularly after not having a great season, it just sort of seemed like the natural thing to do. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, now focus fully on MyWhoosh, and see what other opportunities can come from that. So, yeah, I'd love to do it all, Olympics and Worlds, and whatever I can get from it, I'm going to jump at. So,
yeah, and it's to me, and if you probably haven't heard a lot of Size and I's podcasts in the past, but for me, I know we're still in the infancy of where we're at with this, and we're having to go through this very tight verification processes now because the equipment probably is not standardised to where it needs to be. And, I've been speaking with the UCI. In fact, I was talking to Jacob last week about, how do we overcome this? What's the long-term plan here? Because I think we need equipment standardisation to maybe take away from some of the verification that we have to do at this point in time, in which for the sport to really grow and really start to push on from everybody at home. Because I know, look, for SRC, I spend more time with the verification team than we do planning the races or executing the races, right? And we need that at this point in time. So I think, though, once we get this right, and we're very, very close to it, I don't think there's going to be that pathway of doing local club races and doing all those things on the road. I think the pathway is going to be through esports. And I think people will look back and go, Michael was the first one that took that pathway. I really do. I think that is the only way forward. For me, I cannot understand why there's not hundreds of 18 to 22-year-old men and women out there racing SRC every Sunday, because I can very clearly see where I'm at against the best in the world. I can't see where I'm at against Tadej. I can see this guy riding up a climb on the television. But I know, even me, I know, okay, I'm 2 watts a kilo down. Okay, what do I need to do to get to beat Michael and Jason and Lionel and whomever? I don't get it. Do you see that that's the future as well?
I mean, I think the big focus needs to be on the accessibility of it. And the problem with, if you go too deep down the verification rabbit hole with standardization and things, it probably pushes up the price of equipment, and it makes it harder for people to get into. And I think the key thing is to make it easy and accessible so people can race from wherever they are in the world at as little cost as possible. I think that's really the way to grow it. And at the moment, smart trainers are still not that cheap and affordable. They're still, to get a good trainer or a reputable trainer is a decent investment, plus a bike and whatever else. It's not something you can just choose to do on a whim. Often it's people that have the equipment, that have some experience in it. I think that's probably should be maybe the bigger focus at this point.
Yep, more.
Because actually it doesn't really matter at that top level at the moment. It's more about getting people into it. And getting started. So the more people we can get into it. And that's why I think the changes that have been made recently with the prize money is definitely a good thing that needed to happen, I think, for a while. So
I appreciate
definitely
that.
Bums on seats is the biggest thing. And even though I'm one of the few that's probably worse off with the changes, I still think they're absolutely a positive thing.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of the thought that we went into with it was make it more accessible for Joe Average. So get Cats 5 and 6 going out there, and I'm having the time of my life out there. I'm enjoying having a race out there with the same group of predominantly middle-aged men of a Sunday afternoon that I've had in years and years and years, right? So, and they're guys that I've raced in Australia are turning up racing. So it's good fun. So we've got that going. So that's good. Then we look at this Cat 1 and 2 thing, and this is the bit that I don't understand, and this is just me. I always want to get better. Okay, so getting old and getting fatter is a real struggle for me because I'm not improving. Okay, I don't understand. What we get is people trying to come out of Cat 1 down into Cat 2, not people in Cat 2 trying to get to Cat 1 because that's where the good guys are. So, and that comes back to my 18 to 22-year-old athletes out there. They've got this great pathway to measure themselves against people and those sort of things. And so I would love those people to be pushing in to start to stack up against you. I can't see why we don't have 40, 50, 60, 70 people in Cat 1. All challenging for this. We're paying top 10. I think there's, 7 teams going to get paid, and there's not going to be 7 teams this month. So, I really think that there's more that we can do in this elite level. But you're right about the verification. It's not as important in Category 1. I think we all know each other as long as the trainer and the secondaries and that are legitimate. The hard part with our verification that other platforms don't have to do is to legitimise categories 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and people aren't sandbagging, but that's a combination for another time. But how do we get those NRS kids, or whatever we want to call them, from where we are? How do we get them on the platform?
I think Category 1 should be treated more as like a separate professional category.
Yep.
Like, I think the difference between Category 1 and Category 2 is far, far greater than the difference between Category 2 and 3 or 3 and 4.
Yep.
So to have a different sort of outlay for Category 1, whether it's, I don't know, a different course or different prize money structure or something, I think could be good to really encourage people to try and get to that point, because I think a lot of people at the moment are making good money in their category, and they know that if they move up to the next one, they'll end up losing out, and that's where you get the sort of sandbagging and whatnot going on. So I think that's the real challenge, is to make it worthwhile and rewarding for everyone, but also to have it to give everyone motivation to really get up to the next category. And I think the main driver, a lot of that, is the prize money, and it's just a case of how do you structure that to make it worthwhile to really try and push and be better in each category. And that's a difficult one with no clear answer.
Yeah, and it's and we were chatting offline at the start. It's a difficult one for us at MyWhoosh as well. Is SRC long term a large participation piece where we get as many people racing from all around the world and making this massive community, and we're getting between 400 or 500 people now every weekend, right? So it's certainly growing. Or is it the pathway to be the elite of esports for the top? Is it both? And that's, I think, what we're maybe trying to do at the moment.
Yeah.
And Si knows, and the listeners, and you're very open as well. I'm very open with the struggles that we have with this as well. And I don't have a clear answer. I really don't. But I think somebody's got to jump in and lead this. And I think MyWhoosh, we're doing that part of it.
Yeah, and that's why I think there needs to be a sort of a clearer separation between the Category 1 and potentially Category 2 from the rest. I think the lower categories, certainly with no disrespect, is more a participation type thing rather than a professional environment. I think Category 1 can be the guys and girls that can really make a full-time job out of it, and I think Category 2 is really that semi-pro, 18 to 20-year-old school kids that are really, really good and talented, that are really trying to make that next step up.
Yep.
So whether it's a case of, Category 1, the prize money going even a little bit deeper to encourage people to really want to get there. So if you're at the top end of Category 2, if you then move up to Category 1, you're still in with a chance to make some decent money and to get something back from it.
Yep.
I think something like that. But yeah, like at the moment, I think the challenge is that you have some people in the lower categories that are winning or getting places that are making more money than the people at the bottom end of the top categories. And like I said, there's no easy answer for that.
No.
And at the end, everyone tries their best. Everyone struggles and suffers, and everyone's completely done at the end. So
like Si races as well. There's nothing like, and you've ridden World Tour races, right? And I know that you do tend to ride away sometimes in SRC and, punish everyone. But does racing get any harder than this SRC stuff? Seriously. What about you, Si? It's absolutely brutal for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like that every Sunday as well. But I was just thinking, as you guys were chatting there as well, for me, I think it's great for cycling esports that we've got Michael and Jason, in some respects, who've been there in those pro ranks, ridden those those grand tours and those epic races that there's a kid I certainly watched on telly and aspired to do. And I'm just thinking about the future. For me, it's great that these two are back racing cycling esports, having done that, because I guess that's still, the aspiration for some kids now as well. And I think if they can come onto the platform and race against, these two and many other legends that we have on the cycling esports, I think that's really cool as well. But I just wonder what the future's going to look like. How mightn't there be more synergy? We've got a great synergy now and Michael was a product of that in some respects, going from cycling esports with MyWhoosh to UAE Emirates. We met Casper Boremans.
Yes.
When we were at the World Championships, finished third, for example. Young guy, hadn't really done anything in cycling esports. Was a road youngster who was coming through the ranks, got injured, and I think his coach said, go and do some cycling esports, and ended up third in the World Championships. And an absolute talent. And I'm wondering whether, is there a more of a synergy? Are we going to see professional teams have a second part of the team which sits just with cycling esports, for example? What do you guys think the future looks like, in that synergy? How do we get these aspiring youngsters riding against Michael and Jason on the MyWhoosh platform?
We're really saying is about the young guys coming through and Jasper getting third and then heading onto the road. I think he's with Bahrain this year.
Yep.
So that was a pathway, but huge talent coming through. And it's the integration of esports and road cycling, and not just being a talent ID piece, I think, as well. And there's no reason why some of the World Tour guys can't race.
And that's the thing, I think, for as long as I can remember, the only way to make a living really out of cycling is to be in the World Tour.
Yep.
And now I think it's really cool that you've got guys like Jason and myself who have been in the World Tour, and not just in the World Tour, we've both been in big teams, and we've got to the point where we've actually chosen to do cycling esports over being in the World Tour.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the coolest thing, that
it is.
people are actually really can make a living out of this, and for them it's the pinnacle, to have World Tour and esports sort of on the same on the same table, and then choosing the esports is something I never thought would be.
And the interesting, so next discussion about cycling esports, and I think I know where you'll go with this, is gamification and, are we in a computer game that involves cycling, but there's got to be some strategy and planning around how the computer game works? Or is it still and should it remain the best person wins? Or the best person that plays, the fittest and strongest wins, or the person that plays the game the best wins?
I think it's a balance, like always, because cycling esports is never going to be like real world road cycling.
Yep.
And I think to try and make it as close to that as possible is kind of missing the point, because it's different, and you have to really celebrate those differences and express them and enjoy them, rather than just trying to make it like road cycling. Otherwise, 'cause if you do, then what's the point in doing esports?
Yeah, and it's what I said leading up to the World Championships last year, and when we were awarded those. And I don't mean this poorly against Jay Vine. He's been great. He's been on the show. When we designed that course and the thing for last year for the World Championships, the whole thing in my mind was Jay Vine cannot win this again, right? Point to point, climbed 1,000 metres, and it's a watts per kilo race. So that's had a little bit of strategy, a little bit of all of those things into it. We got a bit there, a couple of things I'd change or will change this year. So, but the gap I see for us is track cycling. I think that track cycling is maybe not as popular as maybe what it was, or as accessible. Like I know as a kid, like we grew up racing at Maryland's every Wednesday night, and it's where you hung out with your mates, and it just doesn't exist. Certainly in Australia, it doesn't exist. It's absolutely dead. Worldwide, it's still a little bit of stuff there, but to me, it's that gap that I'd like to fill. And the World Championships being raced around, 10, 15, 20-minute races, and 2 or 3 of them, it's those sitting around with your mates, having a chat in between races, racing again hard. That's that track feeling. And I think that's where we'll continue on for the next little while. I think I definitely agree it's not bringing about road cycling indoors. I don't think we can go down that path. I think if we want to do that, you can do that for community events, and you can do it for all the features and things in the
just
games.
Fitness and
But for the actual racing, we've got to carve our own way here. And I always thought that a great teams pursuiter would have won that World Championships. That was about where the physiology was. And I think our mate Hayden Pucker who I know we're getting on the podcast in the next little while. The guy's the strongest bloke you'll ever meet, and he's this identification out of it. But to me, he was that ideal team pursuiter.
Yep.
And I think he got 4th or 5th or something in the end. On a side note, can we, while we're just having a chat about Hayden, and you'll get a laugh out of this, I'm sure, because you're not actually on the group chat. So there's a group chat from...
No, we've been left out. What is this about a group chat?
It's the group chat left over from the World Championships, where we're all just organising buses and that for people to get to the event. And everyone's still in this group chat. And so I get this request from Hayden today. There's a bug in the game. This is, on the weekend. And I said, what's wrong this time, mate? Because Hayden finds bugs that, let's be honest, they're not bugs.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, my FTP is 505 and your game will only accept up to 500.
505.
So then that started a discussion that I may have been with Rod having a beverage or two in how many people in the world would have an FTP of over 500. And I think and Jason got involved in the chat, and Jason reckons Ghana and Going Well and Hayden Pucker.
That's about all I can think of, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Maybe a Cancellara back in the day, but other than that.
Yeah. So shout out to everyone out there. It's not a bug in the game. We literally did not think Ghana, Cancellara were going to ride at MyWhoosh at their best.
Fair enough.
But now, Hayden was stressed because it was giving him the wrong figures and things when he's doing his workouts, that 5 watts. So it's onto the team now to lift that to, 520 maybe. But yeah,
his avatar wasn't standing up at the right time. Is that his complaint?
Yeah, but the funny thing is, and it really comes back to what we're talking about today, is you take a guy like this who's just come from nowhere, right? Everyone thought it wasn't real. We've seen it. It's real. Right, and you've raced it, and you see the way he races. That when the guy figures out how powerful he is and races, you guys are in all sorts of trouble. Yep. It's just I heard in the echelon race there was a discussion that he had to wait until like the 27-kilometre mark, and that's when he was going to attack. And he'd work with his coach and whatever for that. 4 kilometres in, he's attacked and started to ride away. So when he learns to stop doing that, but it's more. There's obviously hundreds and thousands of people out there that have this ability and this talent and things that they don't get to learn, and you go, oh, I've seen this, I can do that, I can get a trainer, I can get a bike. So there's that pathway too for the couch world champions.
Yeah, and that's the great thing. It really levels the playing field. Whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, America or Europe, everyone can do their own preparation in their own environment, and it's really, you get sort of, like I say, a level playing field with everyone. And I think, like we were saying before, the verification in the top end is important, because you maybe have guys like a Hayden who's really world class, and if the whole world believes that everything on this is really legit, then it becomes a really viable pathway for these young kids to get into the world tour wherever they want to go in cycling. So I think that's really cool.
And that's what we really try to do, and that's one of the reasons why we made the finals live rather than from at home.
Yep.
We went through that whole process, I'm sure you know about, with Elite and the UCI to get all of these trainers verified and identical, and so we knew what was coming in was the real numbers. And I think it was like 15 of the top 20 men from SRC were there, and I think it was maybe even stronger with the ladies. I think it was maybe only Gabriella, who just started with us, and Kate that had come across. I think everyone else was quite well known to us at that point. And everything stacked up. It's like the men's racing, it's the same guys at the front of that. And Kate and Gabriella have had this fantastic battle for the last couple of months with Catherine just behind them. Exactly what happened in the World Championships. And so I think that validation of everything was great, and to show that those numbers are real to people that are at home. And so we've got all the data from the World Championships that we now use in verification to go, well, has someone from that group of people done something different? The answer is no. It's the same stuff at home. So, the verification stacks up. So if people want to come on and see how good they are, they can measure up against the best in the world straight away.
And again, I think that's why the category one or the top categories are really a whole nother sort of level, or a different thing than the lower ones. I think that the higher categories, the focus really is the verification and the credibility, whereas the lower ones is the accessibility. And just trying to strike that balance is quite difficult. But I think what's happened so far has been fantastic, particularly with the live World Championships. I mean, there's no reason that if you're one of the best guys in the world that you wouldn't want to go and do a World Championships. I mean, if it was for lower categories, it would be a different story. But we're talking about the best in the world here. So
we're actually talking about doing it for Masters and Juniors this year. Little bit of work to be done on that yet. And that would be from home, probably not live.
Yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be a little too
That
difficult.
makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that'd be a cool aspect to it as well.
Yep.
Because it's really hard to race people in your category and age around the world, because you got to travel to, I think the Grand Fondo Worlds were Denmark or something this year. So hopefully we get hundreds and hundreds of people in that style of what we're doing, and that'd be great for the older ladies and men and the juniors coming through. So hopefully we can kick that off as well for 2025.
Yeah, and hopefully
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we've seen that USA and Canada are doing the junior and masters cycling esports championships actually in the next couple of weeks here on MyWhoosh, which is great as well. But just coming back to what Michael was on about there, with it is a really difficult balance to get that verification level right across those different categories, right? Because in some respects, when back in the day when there was no verification at all at any level in cycling esports, it actually was detrimental, because I'm just an average cycling, right? A cyclist who enjoys the cafe ride on a Sunday. But then when I start to race indoors as cycling esports, no one sort of believes the numbers, because it was the Wild West as such in those early days. And I know there's a lot of appreciation from those Cat 5 and 6 riders that there's some level of verification in there, because it kind of justifies what they're doing as well. So it's just having the scalability of verification, I think, that Michael, you're right, that we need to look at as well from that point of view. Michael, Matt mentioned there that obviously he's in this group chat with some of the athletes who participated in the 2024 Cycling Esports World Champs. Hopefully we're going to see you in the 2025 version as well. I know Matt mistakenly asked the question of what those guys would like to see in the future World Championships as well. As I know you weren't in that chat now, what would you like to see? Is there any specific part or gamification that you would like to see in future Cycling Esports World Champs?
I think the format that was last year was really good. A bit more open, which was cool. I like the sort of 3-stage format with a sort of a sprint stage and endurance stage and whatnot. It's really a hard one, because you can never keep everyone happy, and there's always going to be someone that prefers something different. I mean, if it was for me, it'd be a 1-hour time trial. But no one wants to watch a 1-hour time trial. So, I mean, to be honest, whatever gets the most people interested is the best thing. And it's hard for me to answer that, because I don't really know what people want to see. But I think probably it's like was the last one. The short stage is sort of maybe a little bit easier to follow. Would probably be one minor criticism, because I watched it and it was sort of hard to work out exactly what was going on, particularly with the sprints and things. And maybe it was just me, I didn't do enough research, but I think it needs to be really easy for someone to just open a YouTube link and just, okay, this is what I'm watching, and this is how it goes, and sort of have a rider to cheer for and follow.
Look, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that our broadcast needs to improve to explain it a little bit better as well. I think that it was maybe a little complex it'll set us up for the future where everyone knows it's now point-based, but it's a little bit now how you accumulate those points. And I thought that stage 1 would work really, really well with that sprint, and it worked really well for the women's race. The men's race did something totally unexpected. And so that sort of started it off on not a bad footing, but it could have been better. So we live and learn and improve from that as well. But I couldn't agree with you more. And a number of the athletes, it was an interesting discussion, but a number of the athletes were like, we just have to design what people want to watch.
Yep, exactly.
And I agree with that 100%. And that's not a selfish thing of wanting more people on MyWhoosh or other platforms or the best athletes or whatever it is. To me, it's just we need this to grow. We need it legitimised, but we need it to be entertaining. And, I always say I don't work in cycling, I work in entertainment. Because I need to entertain, or we need to entertain you when you're doing a free ride. I need to entertain you while you're doing a workout. We need to entertain while we're racing. Because if you can't do that, you'll go outside and do it. You'll go to another platform. You'll go wherever the entertainment lies.
Yep.
And I think that the World Championships has to be entertaining. It has to be hard. And for me, I want to get the course and the details out early this year, because I really think that people will specifically prepare and train for it, where last year they maybe didn't maybe it was a 6-week block for some of the athletes, but this year it'll be, well, I need my 5-minute power to increase by 10% to be competitive, and I think that's what people will work towards.
Yeah, and I think even running it a format like you do with the Omnium on the track could be quite good, with the same sort of layout with the live scoreboard and even something where the points carry over to each event. So if you finish, a long way ahead in one event, that actually gives you more points to, overall, like it does in the points race or something like that. So I think using those cases where we know it's good and it's entertaining and it works, and sort of trying to take what we can from that to esports is a good thing to do.
No, I agree. I agree.
So Michael, looking forward then, of course, one of the ambitions is the 2025 Cycling Esports World Champs. But what's next for you then, the rest of this year? What are your plans in cycling?
Good question, really. For now, just focus with MyWhoosh. Do that. I mean, obviously that gives me a lot more time on my hands than I had with the World Tour. So I would like to actually spend a bit more time here in the UAE and use sort of the experience and knowledge I have to give something back to cycling here, whether it's with a local club or a team. And also I think, in the last few years, I've had a bit to do with the UAE, whether it be through MyWhoosh or the World Tour team. And it just seems like any time I've had something to do with this country, it's just gone fantastically, and I've just got this feeling inside me that, what else could be here? And it's just something I want to get more into. So
it's so funny you say that, and this is entirely unprompted what you've had to say, and I feel exactly the same, right? And I live here and all that sort of stuff. And every time I mention exactly what you've said, everyone's like, "Oh, they're paying you to say it."
Yeah.
But there's just this something that's here, that's just this attraction, even in cycling though, not just even in the place of that. And Si's been here and he's ridden Hadariat and Yas Marina and the track and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like there's this, I think it's because it's growing, but it's supported so heavily. And there's the little bit of that link of, well, how can I get in and help this growing? Because it's hard to do in other countries because it's been around for maybe 50, 100 years. We're here, it's such a new thing, but there's so many people involved, but there maybe isn't the U's of the world that are doing this. Or, I know Bart that works here at MyWhoosh helps out, and, he's been involved a long time. He's a Belgian guy that's raced in Europe, and everybody comes to him to go, how do I swap turns? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I know you've raced over here as well and seen very, very strong riders could improve skills, could improve in how to race. So fantastic you're hearing that's maybe what you might do for a little while. But yeah, I just love that you said that, because it's just something weird going on here, isn't there?
Yeah, it's just a feeling you get when you come to a place sometimes. And I just have this feeling here that it's just, I just feel calm and relaxed. It's, everything's very organised, it's very clean, it's very safe, it's just got that feeling, and I want to sort of explore that a bit more. And I think with my experience in cycling, and the rate cycling is growing here, and I think that the sort of desire they have for someone to sort of guide the younger riders in the local clubs, I think is definitely there. So yeah, if I can offer my services some way in that respect, I'd be more than happy, just out of passion. Like, it's not a financial thing or whatever, it's just something I really want to do. So
that's great. I need someone to help me yell at everyone on the Saturday morning group. So, but please don't come out with us. It's hard enough as it is.
No promises.
You've already complained about that Saturday group, but it's great to hear. You might say Matt said something similar in the past. I was only there for 3 weeks, and for me it was just. You're right. There was something about that. The ride I went on, I think there was 20 different people on that group ride and 20 different nationalities, and we just all had the same passion for cycling, and it just. Yeah, there's definitely something happening over there for sure. But Michael, whatever you do, I'm sure it's going to be a great success. I look forward to seeing these battles with you, Jason, Lionel, and the rest of the guys in SRC over the next couple of months as well, and hopefully leading up to that World Championships that we're going to see in 2025. Matt, anything else that you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, it's just been great fun having a chat to Michael. I know the story. I've been relatively close to it over the years. Great to have him back and hearing his views on esports and all things in general that we can improve on, and that that he's around and back racing with us again now. So all the young people out there, come out and see how you stack up against what is essentially the best in the world.
World Tour pros, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, Michael, thanks for joining us again, and we will see you again soon. We've been Inside the Ride by MyWhoosh, and we'll see you soon for another podcast.
On this journey we'll guide